Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 15th of March 2022. We are covering the Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. As part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice. And you can get these answers evaluated for free. So 2 answers every week. You can share your answers with me on my WhatsApp or Telegram. The link is there in the description box below. Now coming to the topics that we are going to cover, I have 3 questions. So first one is with reference to microfinance. I'll post it on the community page also of our YouTube channel. Okay, so microfinance, we will also learn about Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. Next one is about Atmanirbharta in defense sector. What India needs to learn from the war's cold facts. Fine, so it's about why India should be Atmanirbhar or self-reliant in defense sector. Then this is a very interesting concept, Sanskritization. And questions have been asked. This is about caste system in India. And questions have been asked. In fact, every alternate year a question is coming on caste system. So I was just analyzing it. So this is important and we need to cover it. Now let's get on with the first news. So COVID jab for 12 to 14 age group. So fine. So between this age group, COVID vaccination will be available. And which vaccine? Corbevax. So Corbevax is basically, I have a video also, but it's basically the spike protein is injected into the body. So it is developed by a Hyderabad based company, Biological E. The technology is coming from foreign only. It's just that manufacturing is done in India. And the other thing is precautionary dose for all above 60. So earlier, vaccination, like third vaccination, was available for only people with comorbidities. But now it will be available for all citizens. So that restriction of comorbidity has been revoked. Now the scientists, the people specifically who are associated with the policy on vaccination with reference to COVID, they are not happy with it. Some of them are not happy. There is a mixed reaction. So the National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization, which looks into the aspect of policy on vaccination, some members have raised concerns. They say that, see, children do not show serious effects of vaccination. They are seen to be having very good response system, immune system, and therefore maybe it was not necessary to have vaccination for this age group. Right, so there is a bit of a dissent with reference to vaccination between this age group. Now coming to the next article, retail inflation climbs to 6.07%. What is the 6.07%? Consumer price index, right? So there are 2 types of indicators of inflation. That is, inflation means increase in price rise. So the one is the consumer price index. That is, how does the consumer, how expensive are things directly to the consumer. So this includes goods and services. And then there is also wholesale price index. So we shifted from WPI to CPI. And why is this a concern that it has increased to 6.07%? Well, we have a monetary policy committee and government which have a framework which says that RBI would target the inflation figure of 4% plus minus 2. Nobody can be very sure that they'll be able to manage the inflation at 4%. So there is a limit of plus minus 2%. So between 2 to 6%. So it has breached that mark, 6% over here. Okay, right. So this is it. So we have the monetary policy committee. And what should the RBI do if the inflation is increasing, if there is more price rise? So price rise is indication that more money is chasing fewer goods. So what do you do to squeeze money from the economy? Increase the interest rates. So ideally we will expect the RBI to increase the interest rates. But RBI has been following the accommodative stance. Because of the COVID pandemic, all those things, the impact on the informal sector, etc. The RBI is advocating the accommodative stance. So they are not going to do anything much about this issue over here. So monetary policy or the interest rates will remain similar. Now coming next one, the wholesale price index or wholesale price inflation quickens to 13.11%. What is the consumer price index? 6.07%. What does this indicate? Let me show this. You are a consumer, you will buy from the retail shop, right? You will buy from the retail shop. So at this level, consider everything is available in the shop, including services also, 6.07%. But at the wholesale level, at the bulk level, the inflation is at 13%, 13.11%. So ultimately, this inflation, this increase in price is coming to the shopkeeper, the retailer, but it is not yet transferred. So ultimately, this price will be recovered from the consumer. So wholesale price index, if it is increasing, that means the CPI will also increase. And wholesale price inflation does not include services, right? Now this is the article where we have a question, and here is the question. You can read this. So this is in reference to the news with reference to RBI regulating the microfinance sector. So what is the microfinance sector? So microfinance. So people who have less income, people who have less resources, they want to start a business. Like for example, you can see this is an example of a financial institution providing microfinance to them. So let me just draw this pictorially. I'll keep explaining using this. So people who want to raise capital, who want to raise finance to have some sort of economic activity, right? So they want to be self-employed, maybe they want to make papad or anything, right? They want to have their shop, they want to do some business of making pottery, whatever work has to be done. So some occupation, they want to be self-employed basically. So for this, capital is needed, but since their income level is very, very low, right? Income level is very low, so they do not have a collateral. Now, for example, if I want to raise something, I want to take a loan, or you want to take a loan, the loan is always against something. You have to provide some guarantee to the bank that in case I waiver, I am not able to provide the loan amount that I have borrowed, then my certain property will be taken away. So there is a collateral. But in microfinance, the financial institutions lend money to the people without collateral. So it is a collateral free loan. Okay. And that means if people are not able to pay back, the loss is of the financial institution that have lent money. Then why will the financial institution lend money to the people? And this is the thing that we are going to cover. So what happens is, since there is no collateral over here and the risk is that of the financial institution, so what the financial institution does is, it gives the money at a high interest rate. So normally the loan these days, it is around 10%. So for them it will be at 20%, 25% interest. So at a very high rate of interest, the loan has been given. Now it is an expectations that certain companies will fail, not certain companies, certain people who want to do their business. So they may fail, some will succeed, right? So this is the idea of microfinance. So it is normally given at a high interest rate. Now what the central bank has done is, the central bank had set a caveat. It has set a limit that, the rates were fixed, kind of fixed. But now the central bank has said, which is Reserve Bank of India, it says that the financial institutions can fix their own interest rates till the time they are not exorbitant. They are not very, very high. Till that time it is fine. So this is the caveat. This is the condition that the central bank has imposed. And it has also tweaked the definition of microfinance loan. RBI is regulating it. So I have just explained to you what is microfinance. But RBI is a regulator, so they have to have a proper definition of things. So they say that microfinance loan is that loan that is collateral free loan given to a household whose annual income is up to 3 lakh rupees. So it is available for people whose annual household income is less than 3 lakh rupees. So that is the limit over here. Now this is just the definition by the regulator. Right, so this is it. Okay. Now for this purpose, microfinance, naturally microfinance the government wants to do because the government is not able to create jobs or create an ecosystem where huge amount of jobs are being created. So naturally people have to do their own work. They have to be self-employed. And when people are self-employed, normally when they start their enterprise, so they will also employ people. So people who have borrowed loan, they are also getting employment, and people who are, they will need some helping hands also. So that is why the government wants to incentivize the microfinance sector. And for this, recently, the government has always been having certain schemes, but the most recent one is Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. So Mudra Yojana has been introduced, and that is the question the topic is about. So this is the full form of Mudra, that is Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency, has been set up by the Government of India, which has been initially formed as a wholly owned subsidiary of SIDBI. Okay, so what does this do? So basically a Mudra Bank has been created, which is a subsidiary of SIDBI. And what does this do? It doesn't provide loan to you. It doesn't provide loan directly to the people. But financial institutions are providing loan, and there is quite a possibility that they need to be incentivized. Otherwise it's a very, very risky business. Not everybody can do it. So what government is doing is, it is providing a refinance facility. Financial institutions are being provided money, so that they have money to lend to the people who need that capital. Clear? This is Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. Now talking about Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, there are about 3 types of loans that are being provided. That is Shishu, Kishore, Tarun. So loans up to rupees 50,000 is Shishu, Kishore, Tarun. So Kishore is 50,000 to 5 lakh and Tarun is rupees 5 lakh to 10 lakh. Okay, I know Shishu and Tarun, both people are my friends. Okay, so it's fine. So this is it. Okay. Now let's come to the question. Access to finance, right? The goal of this Mudra Yojana is to provide access to finance by incentivizing the financial institutions. So it is deemed to be the biggest bottleneck for the non-corporate business sector. I am not saying this. The government has said this on the Mudra website. It says it is the biggest bottleneck. Fine. But it is not the only one. Apart from access to finance, there are other issues also with the people who want to have their own employment. Discuss with examples as to how the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana strives to address the issue in a holistic manner. There are other issues also. Apart from it providing access to finance, there are other issues also. So how is just this facility over here addressing those issues also? Now this requires a bit of a creative thinking. So let's have a look here. So see, this is the Mudra website, and it says that first of all, the biggest bottleneck to the growth of entrepreneurship in non-corporate business sector, NCBS, it is access to financial support. People don't want to provide. It's a risky enterprise. Then the education, these people are poorer also, right? So we have this discrimination is also there. Okay, where are these people located? In urban areas as well as in urban areas, slum areas, and in rural areas, the hinterland, interior areas. So specifically in rural areas, you will not find the banking setup, banking facilities. So thereby, this is a access to finance is a problem. And furthermore, they have lack of awareness. People have lack of awareness as to how to raise capital. So this is the biggest bottleneck. You want to start anything, you need financial support. That is very clear. Now the support from the banks to this sector is meager. It is less than 15% of bank credit going to micro, small and medium enterprises. Fine, you get a fact also. So this is one issue You can substantiate, you have your points here. Now, beyond this, there are other issues also, beyond access to finance. There are issues with skill development, there is lack of awareness, knowledge gaps, lack of policy advocacy. You see these banks, etc., big banks, they advocate that, see, the policy of the government should be like this. Aviation sector, please reduce the fuel prices of the ATF, put it under GST. But for them, small and marginalized this thing, they don't have the voice to speak. They don't even know they don't have proper awareness, nor do they have a platform. So policy advocacy needs information asymmetry. What does the market need? Where do I get the raw materials, resources? So many things. Actually, they are a bit of combined only. Lack of growth orientation, lack of market development, market making, entry level technologies. Fine, we get the constraints. Okay, fine, we get the point in brief. Come back here. Now see, financial institutions are giving money to the people with examples. Now you see the example of Bharat Pay. Bharat Pay, apart from Bharat Pay is providing this, because of the Shark Tank, it is becoming very popular. So they are providing this QR based model of providing, so any payment has to be done. First, the financial institution, Bharat Pay, is providing money to the people, right? Then they say that any payment has to be done, that will be done through the QR code. So what is happening because of this? So part of the payment that they are receiving is going back to the financial institutions. So technology is coming. Accessibility is improving. Now think about it. The financial institution has a stake in the business because they have given money as a loan. So if the business does not perform well, they will lose the money. So financial institutions are known to handhold the people, right? Handhold, provide them training, provide them awareness, the information asymmetry, information gaps. So because they have an interest, they have to do this. They are specialized in this, right? So in this way, again, skill development gaps. So we have the Kudum Shri, for example, in Kerala. So it's again formation of self-help groups where skills are also provided, and apart from skills, finance is provided for the work that they have to do. So in a holistic manner, the microfinance institutions or this Mudra Yojana, by just providing finance and providing that liberty to the financial institution as to how they want to operate, it is providing that policy space to innovate and holistically enhance this microfinance sector. The people, the beneficiaries, they are benefited. Right, so this is it. Okay, something that I really don't like actually, seat selection fee on flights arbitrary, says House panel. Right, so this is it, just in case you want to have an awareness on this topic. So this is the topic here. Okay, this is important. Question has been, in fact, 2 questions have been asked on this particular topic in the mains. I've not shared today. I already had 3 questions. So let me explain. You read this. There is nothing much here. We keep doing this. Okay, so we make Iran, right? So we write here Iran, and what happened was that Iran wanted to. There was a concern that Iran was using nuclear technology. Right, nuclear is, every country wants to have nuclear facilities for energy, etc., civil use of nuclear. But there was a concern, especially amongst the United States, that Iran, a country which has tensions in the West Asia, it has no friends, right? Very few friends, including India. Okay, so Iran is looking at weaponization of their nuclear facilities. So they are trying to they are enriching the nuclear fuel that they have, nuclear resources, so that they become weapons grade. So plutonium basically. So there was this concern, and thereby USA, led by certain other countries, they imposed a sanction on Iran. Because what will happen is, if Iran has nuclear weapons capability, then it may lead to an arms race, right? So Iran and Saudi Arabia, Iran recently fired a missile on Iraq. Iran has bad relations with Israel. So this region is anyways politically unstable, and further, if they have nuclear weapons, it would be catastrophe. What if Iran provides, it is known to be close to the militia like Hezbollah, etc., Houthis in Yemen. So what if Iran provides low-grade nuclear weapons to the militants? So this may proliferate into other places also. So this is a serious cause of concern. Thereby, USA imposed a sanction on Iran. Okay, then talks were going on as to how if Iran stops this nuclearization or enriching of the nuclear fuel, then the sanctions on Iran would go away. Sanctions, I hope you know by now, that is, nobody can trade, nobody can engage with Iran. So these talks were known as Joint Comprehensive, this was concluded in 2015, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. And this was basically P5 plus 1. P5 members of the UNSC, P5, so this includes USA, plus 1. Germany is not a permanent member of the UNSC. Fine, so these were the countries. Then there was still a concern. So in despite the sanction, there was a lack of trust with Iran, and there was a concern that Iran is further nuclearizing. So Donald Trump administration in 2018 again imposed sanctions. So this was a unilateral sanction by USA. Other countries were not in favor of this. Anyways, sanction was imposed in 2018. So what has happened now? Iran is upset. Iran wanted to have that recovery. They wanted the foreign capital that is frozen in different parts of the world to come back, right? They want to develop. Every country wants financial resources. They want trade. They want opening of the economy, but the economy is closed. So they have actually intensified the enrichment of the nuclear uranium, right? So enrichment of uranium is being done to a higher purity, and this will lead to further weaponization. This will guarantee that, right? So this is what is happening right now. Now what has happened is that we are looking at having talks, so that negotiations are going on at this point in Vienna, that some sort of an arrangement is come about, right? Arrangement is brought about, and the sanctions on Iran are revoked, and we don't want this enrichment of nuclear uranium that is going on. Now what has happened is Russia is under sanctions because of the Ukraine war, and because of this oil prices are going up. So what USA may consider is that they may open Iran, so that the oil prices, Iran has huge amount of oil resources in Arab, it is second country after Saudi Arabia. So from here we can get cheaper fuel. So it can offset the increase in price that is coming from Russia. Right. So this is what the article is all about here. Okay. So this may happen. Now what was asked in the UPSC exam was that how does the US-Iran deal affect India's relations with Iran? So if sanction is imposed on Iran, India's ability to engage with Iran is affected. India's ability to buy oil, ability to build infrastructure projects as part of its connectivity programs like Chabahar Port project, North-South transport corridor, etc. gets affected because of this, right? So thereby India gets affected. India has to vote. Sometimes India has to go with the US. So when India goes with US, Iran is upset because of this. And Iran has actually intensified its relations with China. China can bear the sanctions and whatever. So China is having its way, and China is having close relations with Iran, right? So it undermines India's interest. So Iran-Pakistan-India pipeline was going to come. Now it has become Iran-Pakistan-China pipeline. So it is undermining India's interest in that way. So it's in India's interest that the sanctions are revoked, or at least India gets exemptions from the Iran sanctions. Okay, next question. The war's cold facts and what India needs to glean. Okay, I wrote learn over here. It's fine, that is also fine. Okay, so war's cold facts. What are the war's cold facts? Nobody is going to help you. That's the best example. Ukraine was there. Ukraine was being told that you come to NATO, we will give you protection. Okay, when Russia was having military exercise on the north, south and eastern side, that time USA said that we will provide and they will be cost on Russia. But when actually the war took place, nobody came in support. right? They did provide them some arms, ammunition, but that is very, very little, and I think very late also. So it gives a lesson as to that a country has to be self-reliant. It cannot depend on other countries. It cannot depend on allies. Each country has its war and they only have to fight it. We have the example of World War II also, where France wasn't being supported by Britain when Germany was attacking them. Or like where each country has its own interest over there, nobody is concerned about the other country's welfare. Now at this point of time, one issue is this, right? So this is there. The other issue we can think about is that India has to make a very harsh, difficult decision. India is not able to vote freely it's not able to condemn Russia. They have to think about its strategic significance. They are thinking, okay, fine, now the sanctions are there. What will happen to the weapons that Russia was to supply to us? Yesterday we did about AK-203, right? What will happen to the weapons? What will happen to the existing fleet of Sukhois, MiGs, etc.? What will happen to that? How will the spares come? How will we maintain that if the sanctions are imposed? So it is undermining India's interest, right? So these are the two things that we need to learn. And India is based out of, in the north we have tensions with China, a nuclear power, and to the western side we have tensions with Pakistan. So somewhere it seems that we have a more powerful adversary in form of China, but we have to be self-dependent over here. Now in the recent times what we see is that because of our too much dependence on Russia, we have been making efforts by having more defense deals with USA and the West. For example, we bought the Rafale planes, right? We bought the Rafale. We are buying this Chinook helicopters that make so much noise. We are buying this, you must have seen if you are on the airport, the military aircrafts from the USA, right? Globemaster, C-130, all these aircraft, C-130J, Super Hercules. So all these Apache helicopters. Now, when India is buying these things from USA also, what is happening? Tomorrow, if India wants to trade with Russia and they say that USA imposes sanctions on India, what will happen? Again, our defense resources, etc., would be frozen. So because of the dependence, we lose out on sovereignty as to how we want to decide, how do we want to act. It affects the sovereignty. And somewhere we need to reduce our dependence on foreign arms. In fact, we are the largest to the second largest importers of defense, this thing. So here is my question over to you. And this is the thing that I want to cover. These are the facts of the article, but these are the two lessons or two things that we need to glean. Find new word. Okay. So the need for India of being Atmanirbhar in defense sector cannot be overstated. Right? It is very, very important that India becomes Atmanirbhar in defense sector. Atmanirbhar means self-reliance. Now elucidate this statement. You can elucidate, right? Sovereignty of the country, sovereignty of the nation, how is it getting affected? So that aspect I just explained to you, write it in your own words. Then there are also economic aspect also, like economic aspects like we save on money. It leads to creation of jobs, employments if we have defense cooperation, defense manufacturing within the country. It provides the country with technology. So technological developments, and normally it is seen with either with space or with the defense sector. We innovate, we find new and new ways of countering our enemy, but that defense technology can be offset. It can be brought about to other sectors also. So it benefits in that way also. So sovereignty, economic interests, right? So both ways we stand to benefit. Obviously here our focus should be first on sovereignty and then with reference to economic impact, social impact, employment, etc. that you have to list out. So this you can do. Now state recent measures taken. Obviously if it is so important, what is the government doing about it? Okay. So basically the government is doing the following. So first of all, the question was also asked, So first point is we have been focusing on Make in India in the defense sector. We are having the defense procurement procedure. Let me just write DPP. So as part of the defense procurement procedure, a preference is given to domestic manufacturers when, obviously, with reference to the defense manufacturing that is going within the country. So defense procurement procedure has been created, right? So new rules are favoring this. Now there was a list of 108 items that these items have to be imported from, or they will not be imported, they have to be made by Indians only. Even if it is at a higher price, it has to be from the Indian manufacturer only, right? So it has made it compulsory for the government or the defense arms to buy it. Then a question was asked as to the impact of liberalization of FDI in defense sector. It was asked, right? So this thing. So what liberalization of FDI and its impact? So basically about 75% FDI is permitted in the defense sector, right? So this limit has been increased. And as part of the FDI, what we are getting is, we are getting capital, we are also getting transfer of technology. The emphasis is, for example, yesterday we talked about AK-203 assault rifle, right? So the Russians and Indians will work together. They would focus that the components, etc., are made within the country only, we do not import it. And likewise, in the process, you are also transferring technology. In fact, it was to be there with the Rafale aircraft also, that part of the technology was to come with the Indian manufacturers, right? So we are emphasizing on transfer of technology. You're buying something, if you're buying something, you should get the technology also. So both things are being emphasized upon. Then with reference to Uttar Pradesh, and because of the election so much is there actually, we are focusing on defense industrial corridors. So dedicated corridors with defense manufacturing will be there. There will be supply chain, everything will be very proper in that area. So UP is being promoted as that. In fact, around Bangalore region also, I believe there is a defense industrial corridor, right? So these things are being done upon. Then institutionally speaking, we are having a Department of Military Affairs, right? The CDS was chairing over this. So Department of Military Affairs, which prioritizes what are the things that government needs, how to be. One of the things was also indigenization of defense manufacturing. Then we also have Defense Acquisition Council, the things that the defense will acquire. So that also emphasizes on the defense procurement procedure, which is Make in India. Right, so these are certain measures. In fact, if you actually read, it will be a very, very big list, but it's just that I have summed it up into these 4 points over here, right? 4 points, yes. Now 19,000 crore afforestation plan launched. Okay, so basically along certain rivers, right? Rivers are listed over here. So along these rivers, afforestation will be done. So 19,000 crores will be allocated and trees would be planted alongside this. So this will be funded by the National Afforestation and Eco Development Board, that is coming under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, right? You can see this is very clearly mentioned over here. Okay, now I would like to go ahead a bit, expand over this. So we also have something known as Green India Mission. And we also have our commitments as part of the Paris Convention or the Glasgow Convention, where we say that our nationally determined contributions to curtail climate change, that we will have more area under forest. So about 33%, 1/3 of our territory, geographical territory, will be converted into forest that will act as a carbon sink. Okay, so Green India Mission, and the Green India Mission is to bring more area under forest cover, at the same time improve the quality of forest that is already there. Okay, what is the benefit of afforestation? It will lead to, see, forest is there, trees are there, roots are there. So when floods are taking place, it will mitigate that. Water will get stuck, it will lead to seepage of the water, right? Water will permeate into the soil. Okay, it will provide non-timber resources, etc. Right? So these are the benefits that are expected. 32 new roads along China border. So what has happened is budget was announced. Budget is, what is a budget? Budget is a proposal as to what the government would be spending. Okay. Then I want to do the polity thing in this process, right? 32 new roads, you have read that along the China border. I have nothing much here to tell you. Okay. So when the budget is announced, naturally we are in a parliamentary form of government, and no money can be given to the government without the sanction of the parliament, right? So when the budget is announced, then after that it goes to the various standing committees. Now there are so many departments, the budget was announced for so many departments, right? So it goes to various committees, various parliamentary panels over here, where they discuss these issues on behalf of the parliament, and ultimately they are put to vote, right? Thereby it is saying the report on demands for grants for the year 22-23. So the demand that the government has raised for grants from the parliament, so it was being heard by the Ministry of Home Affairs, where it said that 32 new roads along China border will be created, right? And this was at the Rajya Sabha, this thing. Okay, so this is there, and it was for the border infrastructure scheme. So this is a new scheme which is looking at improving the infrastructure along the border areas. Now this topic is important for GS3, that is internal security, national security, both are asked actually, right? So for that purpose. Sanskritization, and I really had to think about this topic, and we have questions that are being asked, so please read the question before and then we'll come to the topic. Has caste lost its relevance in understanding the multicultural Indian society? Elaborate your answer with illustrations. So this was asked in 2020, and in 2018 was one question was directly asked with reference to caste. In fact, that will also be addressed. And there was another question actually between the power on communalism actually, because a lot of issues had actually taken place around the year 2018. Okay, so let's do this. Has caste lost its relevance? So before this, read this. We'll do this article and then we'll come. And I don't want to go deep into this. You must have heard about this term Sanskritization. We are into GS1 society. Sanskritization, that is the title of this topic. So this was a term that was coined by M.N. Srinivas, an eminent social anthropologist, in his book Religion and Society, among the Kurds of South India. Fine, but this is universally used in our context. So what is this Sanskritization? Have you ever, when you're reading the newspaper, you must have referred a person from the Dalit community, or basically from a lower caste community. Dalit is basically, I'm increasing the example actually, right? Intensity. So the people considered outcast, right? Deprived, and a lot of they have a lot of disadvantages basically, in short, right? This doesn't cover that holistically, my phrase over here. So you must have seen that with education, with awareness, there we see more references of them riding a horse, for example, right? Riding a horse and going to the wedding. So basically performing certain custom which they were earlier deprived of. So custom that was associated with the higher caste. So this is one example actually I've commonly seen, and then the police is there around so that they are not attacked upon. Clear? So Sanskritization is basically when a lower caste, people from the lower caste adopt practices, rites, puja, rituals, whatever, which are actually associated with the people of the higher caste, particularly the Brahmin, right? So who were politically powerful and socio-economical. So why do they follow the customs of the people of the higher caste? So that, you know, they claim that, see, we also should have equal status. We have been deprived of certain things. We should also get the same social status over here. So that is basically Sanskritization, right? So this was a term that was coined by M.N. Srinivas. So that is the idea over here. So this is seen as a vehicle of social mobility. It is kind of an assertion that we should be treated equally. The same principles should be applicable to us. We have mobilized, we have enhanced, being economically powerful, or economic status is improved. Social status should also improve likewise. Fine. So it's a tool of social mobility. It is also because of this, because of this education, awareness, modernization. Now, when, let's say, a person from the rural background goes to the urban area, that urban area, normally this caste restrictions, etc., are not there. It is there, but much not so visible. So when they come back to the rural, they assert the same status, they assert the equality. Sometimes it is to say as to why others are allowed, why aren't we allowed. So it is actually a campaign of dissent, resistance against the hierarchical and hereditary nature of the caste structure. Right. So it is a form of dissent. Now see the question again. Has caste lost its relevance? No. Even in the modern times, even with the awareness, with the changes that is taking place, we are looking at this Sanskritization now, this phenomena basically. Right, so this is taking place. I'm doing this again. I'll come to the question later. Now this is one way. But what is this doing is, the Sanskritization is doing is, when people are asserting themselves, they're looking at mobilization and claiming the status of the higher caste. Somewhere you are actually, people are actually, making this caste structure permanent. So it reifies the unequal and the differential caste relations. That you are asking for mobility, but in the process, the caste distinctions, etc., are actually getting permanent over here. But you are stating that we should be going to the higher caste. Right. So this is the Sanskritization, and this is the issue over here. It's a form of dissent, but at the same time, it reifies the unequal and differential caste relations amongst the which upholds the Hindu caste order. And one more thing that you need to keep in mind is that it is not necessary that people who engage in this will get a higher status. It is no guarantee. So specifically for the people, for Dalits, Sanskritization did not guarantee higher social stature. Right. So this is all from his book over here. Okay. Now this is one form of dissent. There is another form of dissent which is with reference to the anti-caste struggle. So basically they're saying that this caste system should not be there altogether. It should not be there altogether. Don't use surnames. Surnames are what? Caste only. So don't use it altogether. Right. So this is another form of struggle that is going on. So Sanskritization and this one. The thing with this is that it is reifying, it is making this permanent, the unequal and differential caste relations. Now let's do this question. Has caste lost its relevance in understanding the multicultural Indian society? Multicultural. Okay. So no, it has not, but we can't say it directly when we start the answer. So what we can say is that, see, we have the constitution, right? Constitution, we have the fundamental rights, we have the preamble which provides for equality. We do not find discrimination, we don't find the phenomena of untouchability. It may be there in the rural areas, but not in the urban areas. Your access to public institutions is not getting affected. Right? Nobody is asking for your surname when you're going to some place, or at least not discriminating on that basis. Education has brought everyone all level playing field, right? More or less education. In urban landscape with more urbanization that is taking place, the caste identities, the caste hierarchies actually get diluted. So discrimination is there, but it is not to that extent. Now, has caste lost its relevance? Think about it. When you're going for your marriage, or anybody in your family, look at the caste status, or the newspapers itself, the one that advocate all this. So they have the caste-based matrimonials, right? So that is their caste-based or matrimony. So that is already there. Okay. In rural areas, we find instances. Rural areas are still, these identities, these bonds of caste are very, very strong and stringent. It says that in the urban areas also, the slangs with reference to caste, etc., are visible over here. Then what about the caste-based politics? In fact, even the recent census, we are looking at the political parties are claiming that we should have a caste-based census. And somewhere it is justified also, because if the government is having caste-based schemes, they are having focus on reservation and upliftment of the people who have been disadvantaged. So you need to have facts also for that. So caste-based census, the government itself is doing that. So we still find this over here. Then what about caste-based associations? There was a reference of, association of, for example, association based on caste, association based on Jat Panchayats. So all of them still exist. It is still there. The caste-based rules are there. Caste-based voting is there. So it is still there. So caste, maybe the relevance has actually, it is metamorphosed. It is still there. Its form has changed maybe, but still we find its roots still intact over here. Education awareness has made a difference, but it is still there. So this is what you have to elaborate in your answer. Right then, so this basically concludes our analysis. So thank you for streaming in to IAS Primers with me, Shubhashish. Bye bye, take care, and all the best.